Hello, everyone. This is Emily Burley. I am the president of Executive Leadership Support, also known as ELS, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar and thank you for joining us. For those of you who may be unfamiliar, ELS is a community that brings together executive assistants supporting the world's most influential leaders. We cultivate professional development by providing a platform for EAs to connect, collaborate, and really contribute solutions to their greatest challenges. We are also the creators of the ELS Forum, a 2-day professional development course for assistants, which is held in 28 cities worldwide. Attendees gain support and training from world-renowned instructors and their peers to discover a renewed sense of passion and purpose in their career. If you are interested in attending a forum, you can find more information at ELSforum.com. Today, we are thrilled to partner with Bonnie Low-Kramen, Gary Rabine, CEO and founder of Rabine Group, and his brilliant executive assistant, Debbie Verlano, to discuss establishing the ultimate EA and executive partnership. There will be an opportunity to get your questions answered at the end of the webinar. So please submit your questions through the questions feature on your right-hand side of your toolbox. You can also respond to our polls that we're going to submit live throughout the webinar. And we will also be recording the webinar, and we will share the recorded version of the webinar with you next week. So you will receive a copy of this webinar next week via email. At this time, I am pleased to introduce our guest moderator for today's ELSx, Bonnie Low-Kramen. For 25 years, Bonnie worked as the personal assistant to Oscar winner Olympia Dukakis. She is the co-founder of the New York Celebrity Assistant. She's the founder of her own organization, Be the Ultimate Assistant, and she is the author and bestseller of her book, Ultimate Assistant. She travels the world speaking and teaching. Bonnie and I have talked quite often about the power of bringing together leaders with their executive assistants to talk about their partnership. That is what today is really all about. So let's get to it. It is now my honor to hand it over to Bonnie.
Well, thank you so much, Emily. I am so honored to be here, and thank you to everyone listening in right now from all over the world. It is fabulous to be the host of ELSx. This webinar series is nothing short of groundbreaking. We are all pioneers because we are doing something that has not been done before. And yet it is so important to do. We're bringing together a leader with their executive assistant for a real conversation about their relationship, their partnership. We're pulling back the curtain on what makes this business partnership work so that others can learn from it. As Emily said, I've been speaking and teaching in 14 countries, and what I see so clearly is the value and importance of bringing together these two groups of people who are so vital to the running of every company. So on the surface, what we are doing might not seem like such a radical idea, but the reality is exactly that. So that's what we're doing here. On the slide, we have our first poll. So before I begin and tell you about Gary and Debbie, Emily, should we go ahead and do the poll?
Yes, it looks like people are answering. The first polling question is, do you think your executive views you as a strategic business partner?
Okay, so shall we wait for the results of that? That's a pretty important question.
Can you see the results, Bonnie?
I cannot see the results.
But the results I'm seeing is 35% say yes, 18% say no, and 47% say sometimes.
Okay. All right. Well, so we've got some room for improvement here, because if that's where we're headed in this workplace of 2019 and beyond. All right. So let's begin. Let me talk to you about who we have here today. When we thought about who our very first guest would be, it was obvious. And in a few minutes, you're going to learn why, because they too did something truly groundbreaking. Our guests today are Gary Rabine and Deb Furlano. Gary is the CEO and founder of the Rabine Group based in Illinois, and they are national leaders in commercial exterior facilities construction, utility pipeline televising, and property assessments and analytics utilizing AI and drones. Very cutting edge stuff. Gary is a very involved leader in his community. He's begun 25 companies in his career, and now he's the very successful CEO of 9 of them. The Rabine Group made Crane's Fast 50 list and Inc. magazine's fastest growing companies list for the last 5 years. Gary cares deeply about mentoring others and created his own non-for-profit called True Mentors, which is a platform that gives seasoned and startup entrepreneurs the opportunity to connect with business leaders they normally wouldn't have access to. And most recently, in 2018, Gary has taken mentorship to an even further level with his new podcast called, get this title, Ditch Digger CEO. And I've heard it. And these rags to riches stories are terrific. And not only that, Gary sings the theme song at the top of it all. It's awesome. Gary will be talking more about that. He is a husband. He's the dad of 4 kids, the granddad to 1 grandson, and the executive to Deb Furlano. Deb's official title is the executive administrator to the CEO, and she and Gary have been working together for almost 8 years. Deb has a busy life with 2 married kids, a granddaughter, and in her free time, she volunteers with the Rabine Group Foundation and NPH International, serving orphans and abandoned children in Latin America by hosting a yearly golf outing with the NFL Hall of Fame players. And Deb, full disclosure here, you and I first met 3 years ago in Chicago when Gary supported you to attend our Be the Ultimate Assistant 2-day workshop. And then you spoke at an ELS forum, and lots has happened since then. So we want to hear all about that. Welcome, Gary and Deb.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you guys for having us. I'm happy to be here. Anytime I can be in conversation with a bunch of great people like you guys, that I'm excited. And I actually don't get to hang out with Debbie enough either. So I always have fun if Debbie's in the conversation too.
Fantastic. So Gary, tell us how this all happened. You've been together almost 8 years. How did it start? How did you come together, you and Deb?
Well, there's always like points in my life I always remember, right? And I was a scrambled entrepreneur like I still am today, but I really didn't have much in the way of people around me. My wife at home always did an amazing job keeping our life organized, but at work I was kind of, just kind of running crazy all the time. And some people organized around me in accounting or maybe an operational leader or something like that could keep me straight a little bit. But, I was definitely scramble minded as always. And a friend of mine I was out to lunch with who had just had some issues. The 2007, 8, 9, 10 crash happened in Chicagoland area. And he's a super strong real estate finance minded person who I respect a lot, a good friend of mine. And I was out to lunch with him, and he just got off the phone with a person he was on the phone with, and he goes, he had kind of like a tear in his eye, and he's like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't want to lose this great person that they just talked to. I said, well, tell me about that. He goes, well, I got this person that's been assistant to myself and our other leaders in our business, and I want to keep her busy, keep her working, because I don't want to lose her when things pick up again. But I can't be fair and really give her the opportunity she needs. And I said, tell me more about her, And so he tells me more about her, and and he goes, well, she's amazing. He says she really keeps all of us organized in our office, and we wouldn't be as successful as we were over the time we've had her on our team anywhere close without her. And so I said, well, does she need to find a new home? Because I've been told I should be thinking about having an assistant that really helps organize what's going on around me. And through YPO and other friends of mine who had strong executive assistants. And so I said, I'd love to meet her. So he goes, really? He goes, you know what? If you want to meet her, I would love to. He goes, if there's a way that we get going faster, I'd want to keep her on our team. I just don't see that happening. He goes, but if there's an opportunity with you guys, it would be a great place for her. She'd have opportunity to grow, and you're always doing crazy stuff, so she'd be challenged and all that. So bottom line is, he got her on the phone right after that and said, hey Deb, I got Gary Rabine with me in the car here, and he wants me. So Deb, how are you? So we started talking. Debbie, would you be interested in talking to us about coming to look at an opportunity to work on our team? And it was kind of probably a little bit weird for Debbie, because I'm sure Ellen and her had conversations, but either way, soon after that, Debbie came in, talked to her, just to understand where her strengths and weaknesses were, a little bit about her culture, core values, that kind of stuff. And then within a week or two, we were talking about, what the position could look like, what the compensation could look like, and at the time I had a president, a COO, and a few others that interviewed Debbie, and they all said, no doubt she'd be a great member of our team. So that's kind of how it happened, but I'll never forget it, because it was kind of at my friend's demise of his business at the time. Now he's a really smart guy. Like I said, he's back in business, strong as can be in real estate, and probably wouldn't he probably wouldn't do it to me, but he probably wishes he could get Debbie back now. But I haven't talked to Debbie about that. But either way, bottom line, great guy. I trust him 100% like a brother, and he was exactly right. She was everything that he said he was.
All right. So Deb, how has the work evolved from that first phone call? How did you turn into the strategic business partner that you are?
Basically, I started out probably like every other executive assistant, the basic roles, doing calendar management and telephone calls and emails and all of that, but along the way, I took the time to really read all of the emails, to examine the reports, and even start questioning like some of our leaders about and asking questions, so I better understood what I was actually reading. Then I had actually come to work for Gary, and we went to a YPO event where Melba Duncan was speaking. And she was explaining to all the executives how important having an EA is into your life, and, how much time they can free up for you. Well, immediately after that meeting, Gary invited me to go ahead and sit in on all of the at the executive meetings each week with the rest of the C-level executives. And he actually provided me with a voice to ask questions and challenge things. So I really learned a lot over those weekly meetings over the years that have helped me throughout this journey. I think as far as our business partnership, I think when you go into a business partnership, you need someone, I consider myself reliable, trustworthy, fiscally responsible, and I think you also have to provide a complementary skill set to the executives that you work with. Gary likes to pursue lots of businesses, and I'm slightly more conservative and grounded, so I try to slow him down in his pursuits just a little bit. Oftentimes, we might have different points of views on opportunities for the business, but I think when we discuss them, that gives Gary an opportunity to make a well-rounded decision on what he's doing moving forward.
So clearly Gary trusts you in a big way, right?
Oh yeah. I think we have a comfort level and a trust level with each other that we're comfortable challenging each other in any discussion we have. Because I know if it goes to him, that's as far as it goes.
I have four sisters. I had four sisters until Debbie. I have five now. I trust her as a family member. Actually, I trust her judgment better than any of my sisters actually. But I trust her as a person that cares about me as much as my sisters, right? Which is big.
Well, Gary, we know that not all relationships are made alike. Leaders and assistants. That's what makes the need for this podcast or the webinar we're doing. What makes Deb a great assistant for you? What's her secret sauce for you and your company?
And so for me, it's her ability to hold me and others around me accountable as she is at the highest accountability. So you never have to question Debbie. I mean, I've never heard anybody say, is she all in because I'm not seeing the commitment, or she was late again, or whatever, right? But to be one that holds me and others accountable, she's got to be super accountable, right? And she is. So her ability to be accountable and then hold others accountable is the key. She's not afraid of questioning me in front of others, even to say, hey, Gary, you're a few minutes late for this meeting. We got a lot of people in the room here that are counting on us to get started on time. I mean, not to say she says it that way, but she'll definitely say things sometimes that I want her to say, because I want it to hurt a little bit when I'm not accountable too. And so she's very strong in a nice way, right? She doesn't embarrass people in front of other people, all those things, right? But she'll pull me aside, or after the meeting, hey, Gary, you're a few minutes late, and we had a lot of people and they're waiting on you, or whatever, right? And so it'll hurt me for like 10 seconds, and I'm like, man, she's so right, I got to make sure I don't do that again. And she'll do that with other people too, and she does it in a way that others respect. Unless they're people that, and we've had some selfish people in our business that think they should be treated differently, and those people haven't worked out. But again, Debbie's been one that's been very, very accountable and yet super strong and holding people accountable around her, no matter what level they are, no matter if it's me or it's a leader, one of my partners and CEOs in one of the other companies. And so, and all the people we have on board today, they expect that out of Debbie, and they appreciate it out of Debbie, compared to maybe 4 or 5 years ago, where some of our leaders were offended by it, right? And so fortunately, our team looks a little different today, and Debbie's helped to make it what it is today.
Right. So Deb, clearly we know that it's not if, but when issues are going to come up, miscommunications happen. And so over 8 years, your relationship has evolved. Can you paint us a picture of an event, something that happened where, your relationship was tested, it was tricky, you had conflict, and how did you resolve it with him?
Basically, the first one that comes to mind is a business opportunity that Gary was going to get into. Great business opportunity, but not necessarily a cultural fit for our business. So we kind of went round and round, kind of had very vocal discussions on it a few times. And, it finally came to the point then Gary's like, my business, I'm going to do what I want to do. At which point I have to agree with him, because it is his money, it is his business. But I did feel better telling him, my concerns about the business, and him being fully aware and going in with eyes open. And
Gary, did you appreciate that from Deb?
Absolutely. And even after the fact, and that one business opportunity, I'd been going through, this business idea we had that we knew could work, could be very successful, had a hard time finding partners. The partner we needed, the leader we needed had to be technology strong, strategy and technology strong. I found that, and I thought I found that in one person. It didn't work out so well. Within a year, we separated. Still friends and everything, but we separated, and cost, had a lot of expense in that. And he was a good person, culturally a good person. The next situation, I was probably more of a hurry to get this thing going, worried about that technology being started by somebody else or whatever, being behind the curve. So we hired somebody that was super strong technology and strategy, and we may pay for it in the long run, but I think overall, I believe our businesses will be stronger for it in the long run. And what we did is we peeled him away from the culture of our existing Rabine group into this entity on his own, and not that that's a perfect situation, but he's exposing this business to this technology we believed it could be. He's doing everything we expect him to do, and he's probably even more not a fit for our culture than Debbie even thought. So
interesting.
It's a challenging one, because it's a business that's actually going fairly well. It's growing like we expected. The technology is as valuable as we expected. It's growing rapidly. but you know what? It's probably not a business that we're going to own for a long period of time. And so I look at it as, hey, we can maybe we'll stomach this and learn our lesson, but in the long run, I think we're gonna have some pretty neat things to use in the future for our business on the technology
Right.
side and the business he's running. So it's kind of like it's a tough one because yeah, if I look back again, would I do it again? I probably still would, even though it wasn't just Debbie. Debbie probably had the loudest voice. My kids, my son and daughter in the business telling me the same thing, and a couple other leaders, and then other leaders that just wanted to see this thing grow were saying, "Oh man, it's a no-brainer. You got to bring this guy in." So I'm listening to a lot of different people. In this case, I made that decision, but I always appreciate Debbie's objectivity, being objective, because I know she's got our business's best at heart as well as my own.
Right.
But and 90% of the time, I'm probably gonna lean Debbie's way. But there's gonna be times where I'm gonna do things as an entrepreneur. I just kind of do things and say, you know what, this one, I'm rolling the dice. I'm doing this one on my own, right? I'm doing this even though nobody believes it.
So when you think of your 9 companies and the work you and Deb do together, to what level has Deb influenced the profitability, the effectiveness of you and your team?
Yeah, so Debbie has a challenging job in reeling me in on a constant basis, and she does the best job that anybody could possibly do, unless my wife was in her shoes, right? And so with Debbie, I believe we are double the size that we would be without her. We've grown double what we would have grown without her.
Wow.
And I believe that my value is at least that. My value is at least double, maybe triple what it would be if I didn't have Debbie, right? And when I say that, if I had somebody else that was, pretty good at this job, if they're pretty good, let's say out of 1 to 10, they were a 7, right? Maybe I'd have 50% more value, right, than I have today. But Debbie's a 9.8, right? So for Debbie gives me, I believe, 2 to 3 times more value in my daily life than I would have otherwise when it comes to getting work done, being the visionary, executing on things I need to execute on, being a bigger part of YPO, being a bigger part of the nonprofits we're part of, as well as doing like this ditch digger CEO thing that I do, this podcast. I have a blast with it. I think I'm changing the way people think as entrepreneurs, hopefully, giving people some mentoring that will hopefully help them make decisions in the future better than they would make otherwise. And those things I could never do if I didn't have a Debbie. And if I had a 6 or a 7 as an executive assistant, probably couldn't do it either, right? So I can't. It's hard. I love metrics. It's a tough one to put metrics on, but I'm confident that it's between 2 and 3 times value.
Whoa.
For me.
Okay. All right. Well, Gary, something major happened in your life in 2016, and it resulted in you making a big change in Deb's responsibilities. And the story is something I first heard from Debbie, and it happens to be something I tell all over the world because it's so inspiring. Could you tell the story, please?
Yeah, if you heard it through Debbie, you've heard a very modest version. Debbie's never going to pump, she's never going to brag about herself. I'm way better at that. Even of myself, I'll brag too much sometimes, and Debbie or my wife will slap me upside the head. But bottom line is, it's been 2 years and about 7 months, I guess it's been 7 months. My wife Cheryl had a brain tumor and emergency brain surgery, second brain surgery within a couple days. Almost lost her 3-4 times over this period of time. And she's, my wife is super strong and when it comes to character, when it comes to faith, when it comes to, when it came to, health, right? Her heart was amazing. And all those things got us through those personally. But within a couple days, I realized, actually, it was probably 4 or 5 days later, I'm realizing I'm not going back to work anytime soon. I didn't care about, what was going on at work. I cared about my wife. And so I realized I was going to be with her for who knows how long. Didn't know how long, whether she was going to get through it. But if she did, I was going to spend a lot of time with her. So at that point, my kids were around me the whole time. Of course, at the time 9-year-old son or 8-year-old son and my 27-year-old daughter who were in the business, and they're saying, Dad, you don't worry about business. We'll help you. We'll do whatever it takes. And And then they're asking me, who are you going to put in charge? You got to put somebody in charge of what's going on at the office. It's kind of a free for all right now. And I said, I thought about it a lot. I looked at my COO. I thought about my COO. Kind of a selfish person, kind of a person that plays some games sometimes. And he's not on our team anymore. But he was probably the position that people expect would be the person to take over. Looked at the CFO, same way. He'd only been with us for a couple of years, and leader and all that. I didn't look, good person, but didn't know how I think enough. Wouldn't think like I think on a consistent basis. So I basically said to my kids, I think Debbie's the only one, and my son Austin could have been one that said, hey, Dad, I got it. And he kind of said, I'll do whatever it takes, Dad. I can handle whatever. But he's going through the same thing I was going through, and so is my daughter. So anyway, I said, I think Debbie's the only one. She's the only one that I trust enough, that has the leadership skills, that has the personality, the calmness. And I'm going to call Debbie first, make sure she's good with it. And then I'm going to call these other leaders and tell them, basically they're going to answer Debbie for as long as it takes. And some of them were good with it. Most of them were good with it. A couple of them were not. And threatened to quit, or in a soft way. One of them kind of threatened to quit, and I didn't really care at that time, right? So bottom line is, it worked out super, super well. I really Debbie made decisions exactly like I would. 90% of the time. The other 10% of the time, she would talk to me about things and we would get through it. So she would call me only when she needed to, and when she had something that she didn't know that she knew the right answer to. But it was very seldom. So it worked out extremely well.
So to be clear, Gary, you named Debbie the acting CEO of the company. Is that
absolutely? Yeah, absolutely. And yeah. It was the best thing I did. And through that time, Debbie knows the story, but right before that time, we lost a ton of money in one of our businesses that we bought, sometime before, 5-6 years before. We lost $17 million over an 8-month period in two of our businesses, and we were just getting through that, the first, let's say, year of a 3-year stage to pay all that debt back and get in good shape. But and we got through that, but we wouldn't have got through that if we didn't make some tough decisions to separate from some of our teammates. And that critical time in our business, what made it really, really clear who was selfless and who was selfish, right? And we since within that time, soon after Cheryl was doing well, 4 or 5 months later, out of the hospital, she's back on her feet, and she's telling me, get back to work. I don't want you around her all the time. Get back to work. And she knows that I love to work. So when I got back to work and looking around and talking everything that's going on, looking at our financials, looking at everything, and talking to everybody, I realized some stupid decisions were made by some leaders. And Debbie Debbie informed me of it before, and I kind of said, well, just roll with it for now. And they became even crazier when we really dug into some things. And so, it was a good time to separate from a few people that either didn't have our best interests at heart or probably weren't in the right position of leadership. So Debbie, even after I came back, probably had even more on her shoulders, because not only was I back and making these drastic moves, but now we had less in leadership than we had before, right? And so, but again, it's been an amazing journey over the last few years, because our business is stronger today than it's ever been. Our leadership, the leaders that we kept and that were in charge of these businesses, are stronger today than they've ever been because of that tough time. And Debbie is looked upon, with a lot of admiration by the leaders we have today. So it's been a
that
great
lasted. So Deb, you were acting CEO for 6 months. Is that how long it lasted?
Yeah, it was in and out, 4 to 6 months.
4 to 6 months, and I mean that it had to be really hard on everybody, because of course the reason, and so happy that Cheryl is fine now. Deb, can you walk us through what that was like, hearing from Gary about what he was asking you to do? Did you consider at all saying no? Like, what was that?
Well, Gary forgot to tell you that he forgot to call me and ask me about it. He sent me an email because he knew I would say yes. So I was actually sitting in a hospital with a family member. So my phone started blowing up, and I'm like, what's going on? Because it was on silent. We were in the recovery room. I left, and, a mentor of mine, a good friend of Gary's, goes, so how do you feel? And I'm going, well, I think the surgery went well. And he goes, you haven't read your emails, have you? And I'm like, no. So, he goes, maybe you should look at your emails and then call me back. So then I read that and I'm like, oh, crap. So then I started going, making a mental list of what all does this mean? The good news is our general managers we have in all of our businesses know their businesses. So I had good people to lean on, but it also, like Gary brought up, we had to make, basically during that time period, we had to identify and downsize in a couple of those companies, which was, we probably laid off $1 million worth of salaries during that time.
And you were part of that decision-making process?
Yes. We met with all the general managers, and it was quite a long process, but, we identified all of that, as well as while I was there were a number of practices that were totally outside of our, our company policies. There were company cars being taken home on a regular business by people who didn't need company cars and things like that. So I was not exactly popular with a lot of people for taking away their vehicles. But it was a lot initially because I realized that Gary's on at 24/7. He doesn't take a break, and you start realizing the magnitude of what it means to be responsible to make sure, people are having jobs, and, there's a weight on your shoulders that you assume that I have a whole new respect for, having had to walk in his shoes for that time period.
So what did that do? What did that do for your relationship, Deb, between you and Gary during that time and then in the aftermath?
I think we're a lot closer. I'm able to, I think I can read Gary pretty well. So I think there's a lot of things that I no longer need to ask him. Like, I can get rid of some of the easy stuff. You know what I mean? There's a lot of decisions I can just make without asking Gary because I know what he would do.
Right.
And I think you'd agree with that, Gary. There's just things you don't need to be bothered with.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I 100% believe that before that time, you probably weren't making decisions that I would have loved to make otherwise, and I wasn't asking you to. And now it's easy for you to make decisions knowing that you know what the way I think, and that I have 100% confidence in making decisions if it's questionable, right?
So, right. Gary, let me ask you, if you had to do it all over again, would that be again a no-brainer decision?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely it's a no-brainer.
And, we talked offline some that you had an executive or two who along the way have not been happy with the level of responsibility that Deb has. Can you speak to that? About how does a leader deal with that when you have executives who are, feel threatened or for whatever reason have negative feelings towards your executive assistant?
So sometimes I believe leadership really shakes out, right? When I say that, when people answering to me, a COO, CFO, they're answering to me, I'm seeing all the good stuff out of them, right? And then when there's a critical time and decisions have to be made, and they even though they know a good decision is being made, they don't like it because of the person that's making it, and it should be them, right? That tells me there's a problem with their dedication and their selflessness to the team. So really, it was we had a leader of our business that really wanted nothing more than to get rid of Debbie, fire Debbie and find somebody else to take her spot so that he could have somebody that he could walk all over, right? And so I mean, but it was evident enough for me. Of course, I he wouldn't tell me it flat out because he knew that would that it would bother me. But he was doing it in an undermining way to say, do you really trust this? You really trust that she did the right thing here? You really, he was kind of, throwing the trust thing at the relationship and trying to get me to think maybe that she wasn't trustworthy and shouldn't be on our team. And so either way, when those things happen, you realize that person's probably not a leader, because if they were in a critical time, they'd be, more mentoring and more supportive of this person in this role that they think maybe they should be in charge of, right? So,
and Deb, what's your move? What's your move in that, Deb, when you have a member of a leadership team who is threatened by you, or, do you have a strategy about dealing with folks like that? Because you're not the only one, for sure.
No, I just pretty much ignored the noise and did my job. I wasn't going to get down and dirty. There was no benefit in doing that. If it came to a point where it was being challenged with, like, directly against me, I would have stood up for myself. But, anything that he would have been pointing out would have been petty. So I think you just have to rise above the noise sometimes.
So you just heads down, do your job, and
right,
let everyone see the truth. Yep.
Right.
So Gary, we have leaders listening in on this conversation, and we're so grateful for that. So you have an opportunity to give some advice to them. What would you tell them, please, about the secret to having a great relationship like the one you have with Deb?
You know what? I'm not sure. If I'm the best, I shouldn't say that. I've got great experience as far as people around me that I trust, and so for me, it's first what I've learned over my 36 years in running these businesses is, find people that culturally are a fit and core values wise are a fit, and if you have that, and then feed them with all the education they can handle, right? Feed them with all the mentorship they can handle, and let them go. Right. And Debbie, my biggest success I have in my business with Debbie is the fact that she just goes. I mean, it probably took 4 or 5 years in a tragic, critical situation and a terrible situation with Cheryl. But through that and a couple of big business losses. Right. But through all of it, Debbie knows that how to think like a CEO. She knows how to think like me. And very often she'll challenge me thinking that there's a better way. And golly, you know what? That's the best thing I could do is let her go.
And given her history, it seems that you are a leader who really sees the value of investing in her professional development. Would that be true?
Absolutely. I mean, we think that way with all of our team members, no matter where they're at in our business. If they love our industry, they're passionate about what we do, we want to feed them with as much as they can handle. And Debbie's one that never stops learning, right? She's always, hey, Gary, I'd like to go to the seminar. Hey, Gary, we'd like to send a few of these people to the seminar. I think it'd be good. And I don't know that I've ever said no to Debbie on any of that because I love the fact that, number one, she spends every day thinking about our business and the people in our team. And if she thinks there's education that should be had, it's a no-brainer. She knows that she needs it or somebody else needs it. She just does it, right? So I believe without education, I'm a very uneducated person academically. My education has come through mentorship, and that's why I do a lot of stuff with mentorship today. But I do realize that if we're going to continue to grow when we do, we better always have our mind focused on what can we do to be the best in the world. And that's going to be whether it's through formal education or mentorship, we're going to continue to seek it out.
That's so interesting. And, on your first podcast, I learned that, and that's partly the title of your podcast is Ditch Digger CEO, that you did not get a college degree, and a couple of your kids do have them and a couple of kids you don't. But that you learned how to run successful businesses because of why? How did that happen that you learned?
So for me, I think it's a blessing for me. I didn't like school that much. I liked the athletic side of things. I was a competitive athlete in high school as much as I could be one. So I love sports, and I did good enough to get by so I didn't get kicked off any teams. But I graduated top 75% of my high school class, and it wasn't a tough high school. It was a public school and wasn't that tough. So it tells you how focused I was on academics. And I look back, and I definitely would be a little more focused today if I went back, I think. But bottom line is, I walked in when I started my business out of high school, anything I did, I looked to find the best people in the world that did whatever that was, paving driveways, paving parking lots, concrete, asphalt. And I continue to do that today. And when I walk in any meetings, I walk in kind of as the least educated person in the room in my mind. And I think I get the most out of that because in all cases, I think I continue to learn as I really believe there's a lot smarter people than I in any meetings I'm in. So I think that's part of life is constantly learning and constantly educating yourself, but also reaching for the best people in the business, in the industry, in the world to be mentored by. So for me, that's been my blessing, is constantly, I'm not a shy person. So I reach out on a constant basis to people that I believe are the best in the world at the things that we want to do better, or businesses we might be jumping into.
Well, I think that advice is great for assistants as well. Deb, would you agree with that? About,
Oh,
the need for mentorship.
totally. I mean, I am blessed as well to have a number of people that I can look to for help and for guidance and assistance. And I think anyone would benefit with that, and I think we should all step out and help anybody whenever we can.
So Deb, what is your favorite quote, or what is your philosophy? And, given that you are a seasoned professional in EA and your career at this point is going really strong, what's some guiding philosophy that holds you together?
I think you need to focus on gratitude and what really matters most, because I think throughout your life, your priorities change over time. So I think you need to be present in what you're doing and just grateful for everything that you have. It really makes life a lot more fun to go through, and you're always learning.
And Gary, what about you? At this point in your career, all these businesses you've started and stopped, and what is a favorite quote or philosophy that you live by these days?
The thing for me is that I've thought about for a long time, and again, I found my passion early on in a dirty business that most people don't like or don't go to school for, right? Paving driveways, paving parking lots, concrete and asphalt. These aren't things that people go to school and say, that's what I want to do. I want to put concrete down every day, or asphalt, right? It's not common. So the good thing is I became passionate about these things at an early age, and I've never felt like I've ever worked a day in my life, right? So I sincerely believe if you find your passion, you'll never work another day in your life. So that's something I kind of live by, and I love to think about. And the other thing I like to think of, smooth seas don't make skillful sailors, right? So when in life, expect some rough seas, expect these things, and really enjoy the challenge as much as you possibly can, because you're going to learn a lot through those challenges. You're going to be a lot stronger when you get through them.
Yeah.
And I think if you start from nothing, and I think that's a blessing also on our side, is starting with nothing at a young age. I've been back to nothing a few times over these 37 years, and never claimed bankruptcy, shut down businesses, but never hurt anybody on the way down, and didn't pay our bills. But overall, we've had some tough times where we've gone back to nothing, and it's okay, because I've been there before, and I see people that have had a lot to start, or came into a business as a leader and lost it, were devastated by it, and they'd never been there before. So I believe that if you can really look at businesses as constant challenges and learning from those challenges, it's a big benefit to you.
Right. Well, Gary, I know you're very much about mentorship, and before we turn this over back to Emily and some Q&A with our audience, I just would like to ask you about this idea that 95 to 98% of all assistants in the world are female. And of course, Deb is. And then on your podcast, we were talking about female entrepreneurs versus male entrepreneurs. And can you just speak to some of the special challenges there, and just what you've observed, and how can female entrepreneurs benefit from their relationship with their assistants?
Yeah. So I believe that overall, my friends that are CEOs in companies that came from, in some cases, positions of assistance, right? And Rhonda Waybright, who's on my podcast, has built a very large company out of Indianapolis, and her organizational skills, and like Debbie, my assistant, great organizational skills, right? Very common sense, smart, and Rhonda's the same way. It's a huge advantage as a CEO too, right? And I believe that if that's your skill as a assistant, then hopefully the skills of that CEO are different, right? They're different skills that could mesh together to create something really cool. And I see that the CEOs that are very organizationally minded, as Debbie is and Rhonda, usually have somebody on their team as a visionary, right? Somebody that's out there throwing vision out there that the team can buy into. So I just think if you have both sides, and once in a while we have that anomaly. Some people I can think of that are an anomaly. They have that organizational mind and the visionary mind, and that's just not that common, right? But bottom line is, I look at most great executive assistants are strong organizational minds, probably not visionaries, but probably could be, and could lead, could lead a business just as well and be their own entrepreneur, right? I don't want to promote Debbie to go start her own business, but I actually would if she really wanted to. I absolutely would, because she could, right? And I think, so I look at the education of what executive assistant can learn over their career. They can run any business, in my opinion, if they're great at it, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you both so much. Emily, let's turn it over to you. Let's hear some questions and let's see the polls, which we have not been seeing, but I'm sure you have.
So I've been sharing the polls, so I think the audience has been seeing them. I'm going to jump into some of the questions here because we have a lot of really great questions.
Cool.
One of the questions we have is, how is Debbie providing value and profitability to the team? Is that something that you've been able to track at all?
Okay, yeah. So we measure a lot more today than ever before. So Debbie is in line with, she's aligned with our goals and gross margins and net margins in these businesses and understands them. So Debbie will call out if she sees something out of whack, right? She's gonna alert, the business leader, myself, whatever, when we have issues, if there's challenges and we're not making the profit we should be making to finish the year strong, or hey, gosh, you know what, our line of credit is being tapped in a little too strong over here. We need to be conscious of that. We shouldn't be buying more equipment right now. So Debbie's been a huge part of all that on a consistent basis. So without that, we'd probably be running wild sometimes, probably creating a lot more, bank debt and interest, as well as without the awareness of lack of profitability or bad estimating or whatever, we're going to lose money. When it comes to growth in the business, I would say it's freeing me up to be in front of my customers, my leaders, and doing those things. That's probably is the most unmeasurable value that a great executive assistant creates. So that's kind of, it's like immeasurable, but I'm telling you, I know it's 2 to 3 times what it'd be without her.
Debbie, we've been receiving quite a few questions about your educational background and kind of what does that look like, and did it equip you for taking on the role of acting CEO?
I also started from the School of Hard Knocks. I went to a private high school, and then I went into the legal field. So I worked in the legal field for quite a few years, working in commercial real estate, handling a lot of that type of thing before I got into commercial real estate development. So a lot of mine has been hands-on, sometimes making a few mistakes, but you need to learn from your mistakes. I mean, if you never make a mistake, my guess is you're not growing and learning, or you're playing it a little bit too safe.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have a master's in business, in other words. This was really something that you learned from working in the role and working alongside Gary.
Alongside Gary, as well as working in the law firm for many years, I picked up a lot of different things there, and especially, as much as in development of commercial shopping centers. You learn how to deal with leaders of communities. You learn how to get up and speak in front of a group, even if you're not comfortable doing it, because you have to get it done. I spend a lot of time researching different things. So there's so much out there that if you just apply yourself, you can go out and get the answers and you can learn how to do it.
Debbie, another question that we have, and it is around compensation. When your role changed to the interim CEO of the company, compensation and getting paid for what you're worth is a really big conversation at our ELS forums, and we do a lot of anonymous polling around this topic to try to bring some transparency to the issue. So there were some questions around if your compensation was altered and changed during that time.
My compensation stayed the time, but I stayed the same at the time, but I received a very significant bonus.
Great. Another question we have, this might also be for Gary, is how quickly did the trust level build between the two of you? And at what point, how long were you working together before Gary said, yep, this is my second hand?
Yeah, probably. I trust people pretty fast, and with it's mostly when a great friend that I trust exclusively, as Alan Miller is, really speaks as highly as he does about anybody, and it's about somebody that he's been around so long. I trust like immediately, and once I knew her, I got to know her over the first couple weeks. Right, I knew that she was exactly what Alan said she was, and I trust right away. Now, I think trusting and making decisions takes a few years before you're at a, let's say, 50% level where you're at a level where you're trusting for decisions you probably should let somebody make as an executive assistant, probably at 50% speed within 3-4 years, and 99% speed today. And if that 1% she makes a decision that I didn't agree with, oh well, she did in the best interest of our team and the best interest of myself. And so again, I think it always takes some time to understand the strengths and weaknesses and what decision somebody should be making or should be making. But she's strong enough, business mind that she'll make decisions as well as I do, and actually probably better than I do. But the way I want them to be made, 99% of the time.
One thing I want to bring up is a lot of people need to realize and understand that as a CEO, you have a ton of resources at your beck and call. You have lawyers, you have attorneys, you have accountants, you have controllers, you have CFOs. You need to reach out to those people. You need to listen to them. You need to take what they're saying and learn from them. So I want, the executive assistants out there to understand that, utilize the resources.
Another question that we have today is, what advice can you give those who want to take an increase in their responsibility? So, Debbie, with you and all of your increase in responsibility, how did that kind of come about? I think many assistants struggle with being utilized to their maximum ability. Sometimes leaders don't necessarily understand how they can best utilize their executive assistant. So for those EAs that are really looking to take on more responsibility, what are some best practices that you could share to doing that?
I think the biggest part of what they need to do is ask, go out and actually say, look, I want to be involved in this committee. Look, I want to sit in on this executive meeting. You need to first and foremost find your voice and express yourself. You're not always going to be told yes, but if you never ask for that additional responsibility, how are you going to get it? I mean, you outline it, you make a business plan for it, you show, that by paying me this extra amount of money to take on these additional projects, I can actually benefit you, X amount of dollars. That's one of the, I think with a lot of the women that I deal with and a lot of the people that I network with, they're afraid to ask for money for what they're doing. And I think they're afraid to sometimes just put themselves out to do some of these things in fear of making a mistake. It doesn't mean you can make a mistake, but you need to know how to quickly remedy whatever had happened.
Gary, this question is really more for you. How would you suggest challenging an assistant to develop a visionary mindset or a visionary viewpoint? How could one challenge themselves if they're more of an organizational person? How could they go about really encompassing that?
So in my opinion, I think it's including that executive assistant in your most critical meetings and asking that person to get involved in the meeting, ask every question that crosses their head, challenge every step they can challenge in the right way. And again, I never have to fear that with Debbie. You know, we talk about challenge. Well, there's people that challenge in a way that is bothersome, right? It's a respectful challenge, and Debbie's a champion at that, right? But bottom line is, if you include that executive assistant in everything you're doing, and a lot of things that they're maybe outside their comfort zone, now they become really at ease with these meetings with, you know, outside leaders, inside leaders, the bank, your funding challenges, everything that's going on. We're pretty doggone transparent at the Rabine Group, and Debbie kind of leads that transparency and helping to people to understand the numbers and how we want them to understand in our business, what the numbers mean. So I just think it's constantly getting your executive assistant involved in things that CEOs are involved in, maybe more than executive assistants.
Gary, another question for you is that you mentioned Debbie has helped make more of a YPO. Can you tell us more about how she managed that?
Okay, so as far as YPO, number one, she's gotten involved in things that we do within YPO. If I'm running an event, she's helped me organize the big events. We've got pretty big budgets when we do events. So I've had some large political events and some free enterprise trade shows. Talking about how do we grow our businesses and all that. And so Debbie's been a big part of helping, actually probably doing more work than the YPO administrator many times, and basically taking the reins of the events and getting the right people in the room and all that. But besides that, in YPO, I continue to gain a lot of shared resources and shared learning in YPO on a constant basis. And if it wasn't for Debbie and everything she does for me, there's no way I'd have time to do most of the stuff I do in YPO. And I would say one more thing. I believe that YPO in this organization should really do more to network together. I think there's a huge opportunity. YPO is just under 30,000 CEOs across the globe. 22 million are in U.S. and about 8 million. 22,000 in the U.S. and about 8,000 outside the U.S. But I think the relationship between these two groups should be stronger than what it is, because I think they could really, really be great resource for each other.
Debbie, a question for you is, what is a skill, one really necessary skill that you would recommend for EAs now entering the workforce? What is a skill that you think they absolutely must have to succeed?
Tact, being able to effectively communicate with their CEO. You need to be mindful of their feelings as well as your own. I think the biggest part of it, and Gary would probably agree with me, is building trust in order to, stand up to take the challenge. And it's not easy. I mean, most of these CEOs, I know a lot of Gary's friends, it's not easy to sometimes stand up to these people who are, titans in business and go, really? So find their voice, find a way to say things tactfully, and always continue learning.
And this will be our last question, and I'd love to hear comments from both of you on this. In a communication breakdown, they always happen, even in the best, strongest relationships. When you've had communication fails or breakdowns, how have you been able to overcome them to move forward in your partnership?
From my perspective, some of it is, admit you made a mistake and how you're going to fix it. Sometimes things just don't, what someone says is not what you heard, or vice versa. I think it's talking through it and finding the solution and admitting you're wrong.
Yeah. So for me, I believe that, if you sincerely believe that that the CEO, or in my case, the executive assistant, has the best interest of you at heart, right? We get through everything really easy. And we have some, Debbie, gets a little, more heated with me maybe than normal, more spicy maybe sometimes than normal. and sometimes I'll just kind of, we'll get through the conversation fast, and then I'll think, wait, Debbie wasn't really Debbie there. She was a little feisty. Maybe we need to talk more. So it's kind of just like a marriage, really. You got to be ready to talk through stuff and not let anything fester. I don't ever want to go home mad at Debbie ever, and I don't know that I ever have. So I think that's to simplify it, but I think that's the way I think.
That's very true.
I'd like to express my gratitude to Bonnie, Debbie, and Gary for their valuable time today and for sharing their insight. Thank you again so much. This has been absolutely fantastic. Before signing off today, I have a few quick reminders. We have recorded this webinar, and we will be sharing a copy of it to all of the participants next week via email, so keep a lookout for that. Our next webinar will take place on January 28th, where Monique Hellstrom, who is the Executive Assistant to Simon Sinek, will discuss going beyond checking the box to become an indispensable business partner. To register for that or any of the upcoming ELSx webinars, please visit ELSforums.com. I hope you have enjoyed today's webinar, and a final thank you to everyone for joining us and participating. We hope you have a great week, and I wish you continued success. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.